Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into 6 seemingly disconnected stories straight off the June 17th, 2026 TechWire. And honestly, when you put them all together, they point to one massive, unavoidable industry shift. Across the board, we are watching the collapse of exclusivity. The era of the walled garden is officially coming to an end, and platform agnosticism is rapidly taking its place. Whether an investor, an IT professional, or just an everyday consumer, getting a grip on this shift is absolutely critical. So here's our game plan for today. We'll kick things off with the end of exclusivity, then jump into security's zero-day crisis. From there, we'll unpack the blockchain capital shift, explore what's happening with mobile AI and multitasking, and finally, wrap things up with adapting to open futures. All right, part 1, the end of exclusivity, featuring Halo on the PlayStation 5 Pro. We're starting in the gaming industry, where a literal decades-old doctrine is shattering right in front of us. Microsoft is actually bringing its flagship, historically untouchable IP, Halo, campaign evolved, to the PlayStation 5 Pro, PC, and Xbox all at the exact same time on July 28th. 60 million. That's the number you really need to care about here. Sony currently has 60 million PlayStation 5s out in the wild, compared to Microsoft's 28 million Xbox Series consoles. The reality is, Microsoft just can't compete on hardware install base anymore. So they aren't just tolerating Sony's platform, they're leaning all the way in, actively marketing Halo using PS5 Pro capabilities like advanced ray tracing and native 4K. It's just inescapable economic reality. So why the sudden change of heart? Well, when you're Microsoft sitting on a $2.1 trillion market cap, you do the math. Capturing software sales and growing those $16.99 a month Game Pass subscriptions yields a way higher ROI than relying on subsidized hardware sales. Think about it. If Microsoft sells just 5 million copies of Halo to PlayStation users, they net roughly $210 million after Sony takes its cut. That absolutely crushes the margin they'd make trying to sell Xbox consoles. Exclusivity is out, you guys. Software ubiquity is in. Moving right along to Section 2, Security's Zero-Day Crisis and the Rogue Planet Exploit. Over in enterprise security, we're seeing a completely different kind of walled garden failing. This time, it's a massive trust crisis hitting closed ecosystem security models. Let's track how this played out, because it's wild. A security researcher going by Nightmare Eclipse has basically been waging war against Microsoft's vulnerability disclosure process. This person has dropped 7 zero days in just 3 months. And look at June 10th. Microsoft rolls out its largest ever Patch Tuesday, fixing 200 vulnerabilities. Literally hours later, Nightmare Eclipse drops Rogue Planet, a zero-day exploit that completely bypasses those exact patches. This exploit is, honestly, it's terrifying. It leverages a race condition in Microsoft Defender's own quarantine process on fully patched Windows 10 and 11 machines. First, the attacker creates a malicious file to deliberately trigger Defender. Second, right in that split second as Defender moves it to quarantine, the attacker uses a junction point swap to redirect that file path to a location they control. Finally, they use Windows error reporting to execute the payload. And since Defender runs with the highest possible system privileges, this grants the attacker ultimate system-level access. They bypass absolutely everything. Nightmare Eclipse isn't mincing words here, claiming Microsoft wants to criminalize researchers for finding vulnerabilities. They say coordinated disclosure is broken, pointing to low payouts and legal threats. Now, Microsoft maintains they are actively investigating and supporting industry-standard disclosures. But regardless of who you side with, the reality for IT teams is super grim. Relying entirely on a single vendor's closed patch cycle is literally leaving critical systems exposed to public exploits. All right, on to Section 3, the blockchain capital shift, exploring XRPL versus Ethereum. Our third battleground is the blockchain sector, where institutional money is actively ignoring legacy platform dominance in favor of pure, open utility. This is a truly stunning development for institutional finance. The XRP ledger, or XRPL, has actually outpaced Ethereum over the last 90 days. We're talking $1.9 billion in real-world asset net inflows for XRPL, beating out Ethereum's $1.6 billion and Stellar's $1.4 billion. Institutional treasuries are actively hunting for the most efficient networks they can find to deploy tokenized assets like government bonds and private credit. Now, let's keep things in perspective, right? XRPL's sub-penny fees and lightning-fast 3 to 5 second settlements are definitely turning heads. I mean, they just landed a massive $274 million integration with Ondo Finance. But Ethereum still completely dominates the big picture. Ethereum is holding on to a massive 52.8% market share and 17 billion in total tokenized value. So think of it like this. Ethereum is acting more like the Visa of the blockchain world right now, while XRPL is carving out a super efficient niche, operating a lot more like MasterCard. But hold on, there is a massive red flag for US investors here. Despite all this institutional hype, 31% of XRP trading is geographically concentrated on South Korea's Upbit exchange. Meanwhile, US-based Coinbase, they account for literally 0% of recent flows. That heavy concentration signals intense retail speculation happening in Asia, not the broad, stabilized US institutional adoption you might assume. It's a critical risk factor you've absolutely got to keep in mind if you're evaluating blockchain strategies. Next up, Section 4, Mobile AI and Multitasking, with the debut of Android 17. The mobile ecosystem is physically breaking down application barriers right now, with Google rolling out Android 17 and Wear OS 7 to the Pixel 8 and newer devices. Google is going completely on the offensive against Apple by fundamentally opening up how apps interact on your phone. They're expanding a feature called Bubbles, which essentially lets any app operate as a true floating window, so you're no longer locked into one app hogging the whole screen. It's genuine desktop-style multitasking. Plus, this is all deeply integrated with Gemini Omni, their multimodal AI that processes text, audio, and video all at the same time, alongside Lyria 3 for music generation. That old walled garden of isolated mobile apps, it's turning into a completely fluid, AI-driven workspace. Finally, let's wrap things up with Section 5, Adapting to Open Futures, and our strategic takeaways. Let's cover some immediate action items for U.S. enterprises and hit the quick news of the day. All right. Immediate actions. To protect your networks from the rogue planet Zero-Day right this second, IT teams have to deploy application allow listing using tools like ThreatLocker and make sure your endpoint detection is highly active. Also, you need to audit your third-party data security immediately. The Shiny Hunters extortion gang just stole 2.2 million Kodak customer and corporate records, and their leak deadline is literally tomorrow, June 18th. And finally, because I know we all need a breather from 0 days and data breaches, gamers, mark your calendars. The survival horror game Hellraiser Revival officially drops October 8th. And yes, Doug Bradley is returning as Pinhead. The ultimate takeaway from today's explainer is pretty clear. Relying on closed ecosystems just isn't a viable strategy anymore. From Microsoft dropping Halo on a PlayStation, to enterprise security patches completely failing to stop determined researchers, to institutional money flowing freely to whichever blockchain gets the job done fastest, the walled gardens are collapsing. Which leaves us with one absolutely critical strategic question. How is your organization adapting its infrastructure and its investments for a truly platform-agnostic world? Thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next explainer.